Hi guys, I'm Us, and today we're going to be doing a tier list for Shapeshifters Team 3. Let's get into it. First up, we have this Lloris card. He's been moved to a centre-back. He does have the premium chemistry, which is nice, and he is 6'4", which is a good frame for a centre-back. Good stats on the forefront of it, but no defensive animations and no defensive traits either. They've not even really catered this card well to being a centre-back other than the stats. There's just a lot of these converted to centre-back cards in this promo that I think are a lot better and more suited. So for me, I just think it could be better. There's a lot of other options, so I'm just going to put this one in the C tier. Next up, we have Flashback Acuna. Not strictly speaking a shapeshifter, but he's been brought out during the shapeshifter promo and they've moved him into a different position. So I think it's fair to consider this a shapeshifter card. This card's formatted amazingly. 4-star skill moves, 5-star weak foot, high work rates. Acuna has that stocky body type in game as well, which always gives players a certain different thing about them. Really good base dribbling stats for a man that is more stocky and defensive orientated. He's going to turn great. He's going to be a good physical presence as well. Very much reminds me of the Zambrotta card that we had that came out not too long ago during the Shapeshifter promo. I don't think this card competes with the top tier centre mids in the game, like the Bellinghams and players like that. However, a really usable card nonetheless. So I think this is a really solid A tier card, this one. Next up, we have Tapso, but now it's obviously a centre-back that's been moved into the goalkeeper position. Now, if you've seen any of my tier lists before and we talk about these players that are moved into the goalkeeper position, I'm never filled with confidence because goalkeepers are suspect even at the best of times. We did have the Cabrera card that a lot of you guys were divided. Like some of you were saying he's awful, some of you guys were actually saying he was really good. I actually did try him since that video and I absolutely hated him. So I'm still pretty firm on my stance that outfielders in goal just doesn't work. However, Tapso is very tall. He has a big frame. So there's always the possibility he's going to make some saves. But like even goalkeepers that are supposed to be goalkeepers, they're different for everybody. So I think if you're going to pick a goalie, you don't pick this one. So I'm going to be harsh on this card and just say D tier. Just don't bother. Buy someone like a Van der Sar, someone that's going to be somewhat reliable. Next up, we have this Booth card. Now, this one is probably going to be overlooked by most people, but when you really kind of put the magnifying glass on this card, it's formatted really nicely. He can play left back, right back, or centre defensive midfielder, so lots of versatility there right off the bat. He's naturally a centre mid, so the traits and sort of animations that are catered to a centre mid also translate very well into those wing back positions, so he's gonna work in this position. There is no doubt about that. Really solid stats. You can get him onto the controlled running style with an anchor, which is obviously kind of what you would want on him anyway. You might want a shadow for the full pace boost, but with the way that the accelerate types work in this game, anchor is definitely the better bet if you do want to boost the defensive areas of the card. Amazing base dribbling, 4-star skill moves, and he also has the 5-star weak foot as well. So the fact he can play left back or right back, and he has a 5-star weak foot to cater for either side, that is fantastic. And obviously, if you did want to play him in the midfield, again, 4-star, 5-star is just absolutely fantastic. That's something that we're always looking for. So honestly, as far as wingbacks go, and one thing I didn't mention actually is the shooting. He does have the ability to Trivela, no outside of the foot shot trait, but he has sort of shooting stats in a good area to do that. So honestly, an amazing wingback this is. Really do not overlook this card. It's actually really well formatted and it's the premium chemistry as well, so you can slot into any of your teams, no bother whatsoever. For me, honestly, I think this is a solid A tier wingback. I think this is formatted really nice. Next up, we have Onuachu. Now, this guy is 6'7", so right away, just like Milinkovic-Savic, the size alone is going to give him something about him, regardless of where he's playing. Naturally, a striker that he's been converted to a centre-back, so animations-wise, not the best, but they have given him the dives into tackles trait, so straight off the bat, he's been given essentially the best trait for defensive animations in the game, so he's going to have something about him at the back as a defender. His base pace isn't as high as a lot of other centre-backs, but he is lengthy by default with 85 agility, so he's still going to turn good as well. I actually think this card is really nicely formatted. I don't think it's like an S tier, or maybe not even really an A tier card, but it's definitely one of the more usable cards that they have moved to the centre-back position, mainly because of good agility. He is lengthy, great size, but he also has the dives into tackles trait. I'd have to try this card to know for sure. There is the potential for this to get into the A tier, I think, for sure. But without trying the card and getting a true feel for him, on face value, I think he's definitely at least a B tier card, this one. Next up, we have Dembele, another striker that has been converted to a centre-back. Again, like all of these cards that have been converted to the centre-back, on face value, their stats look fantastic. But again, he won't have the animations. They haven't given him any beneficial additional traits like the dives into tackles trait. He's only 6 foot, so he's not the tallest for a centre back, and there's just so many better options. This card definitely needed like certain things, like they gave him like a 5-star weak foot and they gave him the dives into tackles trait. Like if they give him some of these other things, and he's definitely going to become more usable, but I just don't see anybody like wanting this card. Like if you're having to use this card, like you're doing it wrong. So for me, this card is no higher than like a C. This definitely could be better, this one. Next up, we have Camavinga. Now, if you follow this channel closely, you'll have already had a bit of an inkling on our community page on the channel of what I think of this card. Now, before I completed him, looking at the card, the way it's formatted, what he is on what chem style, you know, he's basically max pace with an anchor, which also gets him on the lengthy running style. He has 4-star, 4-star, high. He's just got so much going for him. Camavinga is renowned for having good animations in game. He offers fantastic links being French and playing for Real Madrid. It's a kind of a no-brainer S tier card. But unlike some of these cards, I tried Camavinga because I completed him. And particularly as a left back, he just doesn't perform up to the standard of other cards. Davies is better, Theo Hernandez is better. I think those two are the cards that come to mind. If you want a defensive left back, you get Theo. If you want an attacking left back, you get Davies. But even players like end of an era Jordi Alba, just positionally and stuff, are just better than this card. I don't know what it is, but he's just not it. I want him to be it because I did 50 upgrades to get him, but no matter what I do, it's not like he's bad. He just doesn't perform up to the standard of the alternatives. So for me, he's a B tier card. He definitely plays better as a centre mid when you play him true to his normal position. And I know a lot of you guys get on with him as well, but if you really get on with this card, I would honestly urge you to try other left backs as well, because he's just not the best. He should be, but for whatever reason, at least for me, he's not. So this one's going in the B tier, I'm afraid. Next up, we have Kyle Walker. Now, it's been a long time coming, this card, but we finally got a goalkeeper Walker. They have actually since updated his dynamic image, I think. They have actually got the picture of him as a goalkeeper, which is really cool. Now, like earlier with the Tapso card, I always think, like, when it comes to a goalkeeper, just get someone really tried and tested. However, I've come up against this Walker card a lot, and I tell you, he does a job better than a lot of other goalkeepers, so he's definitely somewhat usable, definitely too short. If you come up against somebody that knows what they're doing, they're going to catch you out with things such as Travellas, and that is just, unfortunately, the way this game goes sometimes. Shorter goalies are going to get done by the more loopy shots, but he's actually quite a usable card, and I think the fact his base pace is so high helps. Tapso's pace is actually very high as well, so I'll be interested to actually come up against that card. The speed at the forefront of that one isn't represented correctly whatsoever. But Walker is usable, and we have been asking for this for a long time, so because he is usable, I think we'll put him in the B tier. Next up, we have Martinez. Now, this is another card that, when you look at it on face value, looks absolutely fantastic. And there's definitely a lot of different positions you can play him in because of that base defending stat being somewhat, usable. The only problem with a card like this, though, is he's got the average body type, only flair and finesse shot trait, so he's not got a lot going for him there. But on top of that, he's just one of these cards where he's not going to have the animations, and I feel like he's not been formatted in a way where he's amazing anywhere. He's always just going to be good sort of everywhere. So for me, it's just like, it's a cool card, but it's not going to replace a lot of other ones, and it's not terrible either. So this is just like a B tier card for me, this one. Next up, we have the right back version of Michael Ballack. Now, again, a card that at face value looks really good. When you actually take a deeper dive into the card as well, you see that he's 4-star skill with 5-star weak foot. That is absolutely fantastic. He is medium attacking, high defensive work rates, which is always a little bit backwards for a wing back. However, a lot of people in this game will have their right back as the more defensive orientated wing back, so where that's concerned, that's actually really nicely formatted. Also, a lot of people transition into 3 and 5 backs in game. Having this card starting as a right back in your build and being transitioned into the more defensive positions in the actual centre midfield positions, very useful once again. 4-star, 5-star. Really high base pace, so that really gives you a lot of freedom to boost the card with the chem style in whatever way you want to format it. So actually quite an under the radar card for me, this one. I think if you're wanting him as like a dual right back, then no, he's probably just like a B tier then. But I think if you actually use this card correctly, transition him into the midfield or keep him as a stay back right back, I actually think the card is really solid. So for me, if you use him in that way, this is actually a decent A tier card for me. Next up, we have Balak's left mid card. Now, this one isn't as desirable to me, just because the way his body type is and such just isn't formatted great to play in the wings. Even if you transition him into a different position, like attacking orientated centre mid, things like that, I just think there's so many better options. It's just not how his card's formatted and catered to. So, as cool as it is to have a 5-star, 4-star Balak that can play on the wings and is super fast, I just think this is a B tier card just because there are just so many better options. Next up, we have Gianfranco Zola. Now, I did a video on him a few days ago, so if you haven't seen that, by all means, check it out, because this card in game is absolutely fantastic. If you like your left stick dribbling, your skill moves, this card's really, really fun to play with. He has the short and lean minus body type, which is really, really sort of like an under-the-radar body type. It's super responsive. And this Zola card, honestly, is probably one of the best priced SBCs we've had all year. You're getting so much player for the amount that they're actually charging you for this card. He's just phenomenal in game. I absolutely love this card. He isn't S tier. He's not an Mbappe, an R9, a Eusebio for birthday. He isn't up to that caliber, but he really is kind of like the next best thing. And for the money, you are not getting a better player. So 100% just a really solid A tier card, this one. Next up, we have 98 right wing Thierry Omri. A little bit weird that they made him left-footed. I understand it's kind of in the nature of this promo to switch things up. It would have been nice to have just had a traditional Omri with the right foot, but it's nice that they made him a right winger because that's definitely a position that's been lacking this year in the game. 5-star, 5-star, extremely high base stats. He's even had the additional outside of the foot shot trait added in that. Omri has great animations in this game, but it was always kind of... His stats a little bit on the dribbling let him down. The fact he was only 4-4, just quite a disrespectful card for how much of a player this man was. But yeah, finally a card to do this man justice. This is absolutely an S tier card, this one. Next up, we have Schweinsteiger. Now, he's been converted to a centre-back, and the thing that really stands out to me instantly when I look at this card is the base defending and physical at 97. And the fact if you put an anchor on this card to get the pace boost and max those stats out completely, you also get him onto the lengthy running style as well. So really, really juiced card, this one. He's a little bit short at 6 foot for a centre-back. He's not going to have that frame of a Van Dijk. But with how high those base defending and physical stats are, the fact his centre mid card, his standard card, already has defensive capabilities anyway, so he's kind of got those animations already there. I definitely think this would actually be a really good card in game. I'd probably quite like this in a 3-back kind of setup, as more of the ball playing centre back, but not an S. But I actually think this card will probably be pretty darn good in game, so I'm going to put this into the A tier, this one. Next up, we have centre mid Figo, a really, really cool card. Not one that I really saw coming, like a Figo with this amount of defensive capability. He's really, really rounded, very much similar to the Socrates card that we saw. The only thing that Socrates has over Figo is he has that enormous frame, which is just so dominant with the way FIFA works. It's why players like Hullet have been staples in the game year and year and year after year. So for me, Figo, an awesome card. Doesn't quite cut it into the S tier, but definitely a solid card nonetheless. So A tier for me on this one. Next up, we have Luis Figo's striker card. Now, this one is 5-star skill moves opposed to 5-star weak foot, like the centre mid version. Again, formatted really, really nicely. High-low work rates outside of the foot shot and finesse shot traits on this card. He's going to play great. He is just going to play great because of how it's formatted, because he's got the skill moves, he's got the great shooting traits, and he just has really high base stats. He doesn't have the level of jam that those real S-tier attackers have, like this Omri will, like the R9s and so on and so forth. But he's going to be really good. He's going to be a really fun card. Very similarly formatted, actually, to Trent, who is our next one up. So, for me, this is just a really solid A-tier card, this one. Next up, we have Trent AlexanderArnold. Now, if you guys saw one of my more recent videos, you'll know that I absolutely love this card. The animations in game translate so well into the attack. Obviously, Trent is renowned for being one of the best ball players in the world, and those animations have been put into the game. Now, in the attack, he feels really quick off the mark. The skill moves come off great. His runs and positioning are phenomenal. And obviously, just having that level of passing animation in the final third to make those through balls time and time again is just invaluable. If I'm being really neutral, this card is definitely an A-tier card, because I know a lot of other people would take a lot of other cards over this one. For me, he is an S tier, but I try and do these as neutral as possible to give you guys the best gauge of how these cards actually perform. So I think it's fair to put this in the A, but in my heart, this guy is an S tier. Next up, we have Pepe. Now, this is actually a cool card. He's 4-star, 5-star. He even has a unique body type. He has traits such as the outside of the foot shot trait. His shot power is very high, though, so that kind of gets rendered useless apart from getting the more favourable animation shooting across goal. He doesn't have stats up to the level of like the Zolas, the Trents, the Figos that we've just looked at, so I kind of find it hard to give this guy a case to get into the A tier, but he would be usable nonetheless. So I think this is just a really solid B tier card, this one. Next up, we have En-Nesyri. Now, this one's quite annoying for me because he had a Player of the Month card that was 4-4, and then they've released this one and it's 5-3. So it's like they didn't kind of stick to the upgrades that were there and add to it. They've kind of swapped it. So I don't know. This one's just quite underwhelming, and there's so many better cards, and the 3-star weak foot does kind of kill it, especially considering he was 4-4, and then they changed him to 5-3. It's just like, just keep the 4 weak foot and give him the 5 skills. Like, we're right at the back end of this year's game. Like, there's no reason to like be mixing and matching. Just boost the cards more. So I think for that reason, definitely just C tier. The card's still usable. It's not a don't even bother, but it's kind of just like they could have done a lot more with this. Paul Pogba. Really maxed out stats, high-low work rates, unique body type, 5-star, 5-star, like every trait under the sun. You know where this is going. There is no other place for this card other than the S tier. Next up, we have Hugo Lloris. Now, he's been given a centre midfielder card, very much like Milinkovic-Savic was in one of the previous teams. So we know goalkeepers actually do translate to the centre mid position pretty well in this game. Their frames just generally being bigger, and then giving them these such rounded cards. It's really juicing them up and making them usable. This card is 4-star, 5-star, and obviously it's so defensively robust in the way it's formatted. He's also high defensive work rates, medium attacking, so he is a little bit more of a sit-back style. I guess a little bit of like a Kante in the way he's formatted, except obviously he's a lot bigger than Kante. I definitely think this card is going to be fantastic in game, but I still wouldn't pick this over like a Hullet or somebody like that. I've heard a lot of people say good things about this card though, so I think it's fair to put this one into the A tier. Next up is Joao Felix. Now, this is a card that is not being talked about enough, in my opinion. He's 5-star, 5-star. He can play the centre mid or centre attacking midfielder position in your builds. He has the defensive capabilities, which means he's fantastic for that sort of Nkunku role, where he's like your attacking orientated centre mid. He can Travella. He's got the outside of the foot shot trait and shot power in a modest enough position. Unique body type. There's so much going right for this card that I just think it's being really overlooked. Maybe because of the price, maybe because he's not someone that is normally picked, but I think this card is formatted really, really perfectly for this game's meta. So for me, he's going into the S tier. Next up, we have the 95 rated Harry Maguire striker card. Now, I think with all of these big men that they're putting as strikers, it's kind of become common knowledge that the one that is working best is Czech. The Czech SBC is very reasonably priced, and for whatever reason, he's just obscenely quick off the mark. He definitely has like that Harry Kane-esque speed, maybe even more so. But he's just got those really good shooting animations as well. That one seems to be formatted the best. The rest of the cards like this, the Neuers, the Maguires, the Rudigers, they just don't seem to be playing up to the level of that Czech card, which I think now in retrospect is probably like a solid A tier card. So this one for me is like another B tier striker. Next up, we have the left-back Klosterman card. Now, I think most people, including myself, look at this, and regardless of how good the dribbling, the passing, and even the shooting kind of is, we all think of this card as a centre-back still. Because he is formatted in a way where he can still be an absolute animal at centre-back, and with his base pace being so high, an anchor basically maxes him out everywhere that you would need him to be maxed out at. So there's a definite potential for this card to be an S-tier centre-back, but he is formatted as a left-back. I think the skills on him are a little bit of a gimmick because they're not going to come off great because of his size. So for me, I'm going to go A-tier for this one, but I definitely think there is a potential for an S-tier with him at centre-back, but I would have to give him a good bit of game time to be sure. But for right now, we'll go A-tier. Next up, we have Ruse. Now, he's been given basically a mirror kind of card. He's been switched from the left back to the right back position. Now, because his base pace is so high, you can really format this card any way that you want to, depending on whether you're playing really offensive with your wing backs or you're being more defensive. But he is 5-star, 4-star as well. High work rates. He has quite an abundance of traits. I really like the look of this card. I think it looks absolutely fantastic. I think it's an A tier. I think if his shot power was lower and he had the outside of the foot shot trait, and he had a bit more of an Alphonso Davies vibe where he has that Travella threat from the overlapping wide positions. This card genuinely could have been S tier, but with the way it's formatted and the way this game sort of works, I think this is a solid A tier wingback. Next up, we have Gavi. Now, this has been one of the more desirable objectives that they've brought out for me, because on my second account, there are a lot of sort of La Liga players, particularly Spanish and Barcelona as well, with the likes of Busquets and Alba. So this card for me, off the bat, was one I just wanted to get done straight away. And he has the dives into tackles trait, so instantly translates well into being a defender. He does actually have that on his base card, so that is just built into this card's AI as it is. He's got such high base pace to gain that you don't necessarily have to touch it. It is high enough where it is competent enough. If you want to be really meta, you obviously just boost it. But the fact that his shooting is good but not great is actually kind of a good thing. Because like what I was saying with Ruse, whether his shooting is almost too high, with this one it's in a place where it actually will make the animations come off more favourable with the likes of the Travellas and stuff from an overlapping wingback. If you go with something like a Gladiator chem style on this, if you are using offensive wingbacks, then you've really got a perfectly rounded overlapping wingback. But you can still format this with an anchor, you can still make him more of a ball player with an engine, you can transition this card into the midfield, 4-star, 5-star as well, so lots of options with this card. It kind of makes me think more creatively and how I can sort of adjust my team and shift players around in game to sort of make him play different roles. So I think it's a really cool card, and because of how versatile it is with what you can do with it, and he has good links, I think this is another A-tier wingback. Next up, we have Mario Götze. This man somehow manages to stay relevant in FIFA year after year after year. He always gets special cards, and they're always pretty decently formatted as well. And this is no exception. He has the premium chemistry on him, so you can fit him into any of your teams so long as you have got a right winger slot. Formatted in a way where, with those defensive capabilities and physicals, there's definitely more positions that you can transition him to in-game. He can play as a ball-playing centre-mid. He can be more attacking-orientated centre-mid in a 4-3-2-1. He can definitely play on the wing. He can play at cam. His shooting is formatted in a way where he can Travella. He has the outside of the foot shot trait. He's got really good base pace. This card is really overlooked. 5-star skill moves as well. I nearly made a video on this card because I knew with the way it was formatted that he would be pretty much as good as anyone at that role, but it's one that people just won't look at because of just the sort of club that he's from. People sort of almost ignore the fact that he's got the premium chemistry on him. So for me, if you actually just look at the card, the way it's formatted, what it has traits-wise, skill-wise, stats-wise, this is a really, really good card. Now, I'm not going to go full on and say S tier, but this honestly is like a solid A tier card for me, this one. Last but never least is Sol Campbell's left winger icon card. Now, they've given him 99 base pace, which is a great start because it means you've got a lot of options with how you want to format the card with a chemistry style. You can make this card lengthy as well with something like a marksman, so he needs about an 8 boost on the strength to make him lengthy. So you can format the card in different ways to kind of cater for how you want him to play, but he's high and stocky body type. He's going to feel heavy on the ball. He's going to be a bit of a straight line runner for sure. He definitely could have done with maybe a couple of shooting traits. They could have given him a 5-star capability to make him a little bit more desirable as well, like they gave Balak. So for me, he's kind of like a poor man's Balak with the way he's formatted. So I think this card is just can go in the B tier because he's max pace. He's going to have something about him, but he's just not going to be like any of your top tier attackers, this one. There we are, guys. That is a wrap on Team 3 for the Shapeshifters tier list. Now, when I look at this, I think this just shows a clear indication of the power curve rising. To have that many players as what we would think of as A-tier cards just kind of shows that level of card is becoming kind of like the standard, and you're needing cards better than that now to truly be, you know, deemed solid, like top-tier meta cards. So realistically, in a month's time, we'll probably think of most of these A-tier cards as Bs because there's going to be a lot better options. However, looking at it, I think the team overall is really solid. They've given us a lot of usable cards, particularly in that A-tier section with the likes of the Figos, the Trents. You know, even like the Lloris card is very, very usable. Players like Götze are going under the radar. Even objective players up to the level of that Gavi card is absolutely fantastic. Let me know what cards in this team is your favourite, and let me know which ones of mine that you disagree with. Camavinga, I know, I can see it coming. More than anything though, guys, if you did make it this far in the video, I really appreciate your time. If you did enjoy it, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and turn your bell on. Take care, guys.